M Studios, brought to you by Old Mutual.
I've been involved in the local industry for since I was 18, which is a very long time, like more than 20 years ago, and I've seen a whole lot. And yeah, my general feeling now is that I've picked up a lot of tips and ideas along the way, some of which were super hard to find out. And it's really cool to be able to come back and speak to you guys and yeah, hopefully provide some useful insights or some hopeful tips that'll make things make a bit more sense for you guys, or maybe make it a bit easier for you along the road. Because yeah, being a musician is really the dream, but it's a difficult dream to achieve, and we all need to help each other. And it's a lot of effort, but you know, effort together goes much further than effort alone. I started off in the music industry just being a music lover, like everyone else, and when I was in university, I joined the student radio station, and then really got involved with interviewing bands and going to gigs and stuff. And from there, yeah, became a photographer and a journalist. Went into using my media connections to promoting events and promoting venues. After which, I actually owned a venue of my own for a few years in Cape Town called the Independent Armchair Theatre. We just really pushed local music as hard as we could. And then it was after that I actually decided to become a musician on my own. I'd been in some bands and stuff before, but I've never really taken it on my own. And since then, which is the last 10 or 12 years, I've just been gigging and touring. I toured all over Southern Africa. I've toured all over Europe. And now I live in Germany, and I have a small PR company, and I give workshops to independent musicians, as well as continuing to make my own music. So that just gives you an idea where I've come from. The theme of today, what I want to talk about, it's called the Independent Musician's Toolkit. It is basically some ideas and some actual practical stuff that you guys can do to try just to get an idea of what is required of you. You know, that's kind of a big lesson I've learned over the years is that we're sold the dream. You know, we read the magazines and we read the websites and we see the music videos, and they present the dream, which is really the end point. And a lot of the times that dream is sort of imaginary. You know, it only exists in the music video. Doesn't give the full truth. And there's a lot we can do to understand how to manage our lives and manage our careers so that we can get as close to that dream as possible. Because often we aren't shown the steps in between. You know, we're really shown where we know where we are, and we're shown what is there at the end, but we often aren't shown the steps in between. And it's very important to understand that stuff. So this is how I really like to start all my workshops. Confucius was an ancient Chinese philosopher from like 2,500 years ago. And he said that it has never been the case that what was of great importance has been slightly cared for, and at the same time, what was of slight importance has been greatly cared for. And it's important for everything in life, but it's especially important in music and any art form, that you don't get anything without putting a lot of work in. And if you want to do something really great, it's not going to come for free. You know, you have to put in the effort. But when you do put in the effort, you will end up with something awesome. It's not going to be that you worked for years and years and years and you don't come out with something really special. It might not be exactly what you thought it would be in the beginning, but it will be something that you could never imagine, and it's always worth the journey. And I like to start off with that, because it's always a good thing to keep in mind whenever when you're working on your music or when you're working on anything in life. But this is the big question that we're all facing, right? How do I become successful? Like, you start off in music and you think, I want to be a star, I want to be famous, I want to do all the things I see my heroes doing, but how do I do it? And everyone is asking this question. You know, everyone who is not already successful wants to know how to become successful. But the truth is, we don't know, and often we're really just hoping that someone will come and do it for us, whether it's a label or a booking agent or a manager, or maybe some other act brings you up. you have a viral music video, you get on some awesome playlist or on some awesome blog, which really changes your life. And while those things are all important, the truth is that they often don't know how to do it either. You know, there's this story from not a story, but a fact from the music industry before streaming, before the internet, when album sales were the main thing. And on any label, there would usually be one act which was making a lot of money, and a lot of the other acts were basically being paid for by that act. A lot of them were losing money. And you would have one act that was basically floating the label, or 5 acts that were floating another 100 acts. And even though it's, on the one hand, it's great that the labels would give everyone a chance, it also meant that it wasn't a guarantee that anyone became successful. Even if a label or a manager knew how to create a successful act from one group, it didn't necessarily mean that they'd be able to create a successful act from the very next one that came along. And what that means is that there's a hard truth, is that you're going to have to do it yourself. We can build a team around us, and that team would include labels, managers, PR people, the other artists. But you need to guide the process. You can't sit around and wait for someone else just to come and magically make you famous or just open that door for you. Some people will open doors for you. People will be opening doors for you the whole way through your career, but you're going to need to be the person who's walking up to those doors, who's walking up to those people, and it's a lot of people and a lot of doors, and you need to be the person who's driving the process, and essentially you need to take responsibility for that. You can't be sitting around waiting for people to do stuff for you. You need to be the person driving the car. You know where the destination is. You need to drive there. And one important part of taking this responsibility for yourself is having the right mindset about what you're doing. I like to call it learning to focus on your average. And yeah, there's a bit of actual psychological background to this, so let's get into that first. So basically, all of us humans, we're actually not that far away from just living in caves and hunting animals and gathering fruit from the trees and stuff. And evolution, in order for us to survive that kind of situation, made it important for us to notice things that were out of the ordinary. You know, whether there was a lion around the corner, or some sort of snake, or poisonous berries, or whatever it was. Like, we needed to notice when things were different, because as long as things were normal and safe, we could go out and do our business. But when we needed to notice if maybe a tree had fallen down or something was out of place, that we should be more aware of stuff. And this still exists within our minds, but in the modern context, it means that we are much more aware of things that are unusual. Anything that is normal or that happens all the time, we tend to ignore it a little bit, where actually we will notice viral videos or hit singles or artists that just made it from nothing. Like, we will end up paying far more attention to those things because they're different from the usual, and our minds are attracted to things which are different from the usual, which is why we like new kinds of art and new kinds of music and new kinds of anything. Change, we're really attracted to that sort of stuff. But it can make it difficult when we think about ourselves. Just an example of this: did you think of being attacked by a shark? You know, like, I'm going to tell you, you're going to go swim in the sea. There's a 1 in 264 million chance you're going to get attacked by a shark. But that one chance is going to make you very wary of going into the sea. And 264 million people, that's South Africa, Mozambique, Zim, Botswana, Namibia, Tanzania, Kenya, Angola, Zambia. Like, imagine all of those people are going to go into the sea at one time. Only one of them is going to get bit by a shark, but it's knowing that it's still going to make you not want to go into the sea. And it's such a tiny thing, but we still pay super huge amounts of attention to it. And the same is, the opposite is winning the lottery. You know, there's 1 in 14 million chance. It's basically, if you played the same number in the lottery for 30,000 years every day, you would end up winning. And that, it's such a small chance, but you'll still buy a lottery ticket. You still think, yeah, this could be my thing. So these very rare occurrences have a really big place in our brain. And the problem is that when we think about ourselves and when we think about what we expect from life and how we react to stuff, often we overreact to very small things. And, if you play a show, I've had this experience, you play a show, it's a great show, like, there's loads of people there, everyone comes up to you and says, oh man, that was a great show, and one person is like, I didn't like it, it'll kill you, like you just brings you so down, even though it's like one person out of a whole room or of a whole crowd, you will really take that negative feeling to heart. And in the same way is that if you have a great show, you suddenly expect every show to be like that. And when the next show isn't, you get super disappointed. And these are two things, neither of those are real, and both of them, you had a great show. The chances are your next show might be a little bit worse than that. If it's the best show you ever had, it's never you can never keep on having the best. At some point, it's a little bit worse, and you shouldn't let that get you down. But at the same time, if you've had a great show and one person didn't like it, yeah, they didn't like it. What can you do? But these things, like it can be when you're trying to approach an artist or a manager to work with you and they're not interested, you can really take that to heart. Or if you write a great song and the next day you don't write a great song, suddenly you feel like you're not a great songwriter. And those things, you need to be able to ignore them and you need to be able to move through the process. And this is why I like to talk about working on your average, because the truth in this story is really somewhere in the middle. It looks a little bit like this, As you can see, the best that you have to offer, or the best things that happen to you, they're right at the top. It's not everything, and the same goes for the worst. And the truth is that most of your work, most of your interactions, most of your experiences are going to be somewhere in the middle. They're not going to be best, they're not going to be worst. They're going to be somewhere in the middle of that measure. And what we really need to do is start to think about what our average is. The truth about where you are really in life as a songwriter, like as a performer, as anything in the music industry is, what is your average? What is your average song like? What is your average performance like? What is your average practice like? What is your average professional interaction like? Because these are things you can get a grip on. If you feel like your average song is not good enough, you can really work on it. You're like, what don't I know? What can I work on better? What new skills can I learn? What music theory can I learn? Should I be listening to different stuff? Should I be doing some tutorials or courses? You can work on that, and you don't have this pressure of trying to do your best every single time, because your best will naturally improve as your average improves. And people are not only going to listen to your best song forever. You want them to listen to all of your songs. So it's important that your whole body of work improves, not just that you have one great moment. Because what happens if you had that great moment today, and in 10 years' time, your best moment is still 10 years ago? You don't want to be concentrating on that stuff. You want to be concentrating on moving your work as a whole to improving that on average. Again, you can think about, on average, how many days per week or how many hours per day do you write music or practice music or work on your career? It's not like, oh, today I worked for 10 hours, but tomorrow and the day before I'm not going to work, You want to think, cool, on average I'm working like 2 or 3 hours a day on my songwriting, and I can really see the improvement. And I kind of like to say, I know everyone here is probably more of if you're a sports fan, you're probably more of a soccer fan than a cricket fan. But the amazing thing about cricket is that, well, the interesting thing at least, is that cricket players, they judge their career on their average. On average, how many runs did they score? On average, how many wickets did they take? Sure, people will think about the best, like I scored 200 runs or I took this many wickets in a game. But really, like when the cricket industry looks back on careers, they look back on the average. How good was that batsman on average? If you have a 40 average or a 50 average, people consider you to have had a great career. And as a musician, you want to be that person. You want to look back on your career and you go like, yeah, my average was, in cricket terms, a 40 or a 50. You know, it wasn't a 10 or a 20. And even though I might have scored 200 runs on the one occasion, it's the 40 or 50 that's really going to be the sign of how hard you worked and how far you came. So there you look. There is your average line, and you can move that line. And you can move that line in a way that the more people listen to your work, they just realize there's so much to take from it. And it's also much easier to move that line than to just be focusing on your best. Because sometimes your best is unexplainable. You know, I have a song, I wrote it like 10 years ago, and every single show, no matter what show I play, that is the song that people come and talk to me and say, oh man, I love that song. I love that song. And I don't know what I did. You know, I wrote the song. Yeah, I remember writing it. It was a special moment. I thought this is a cool song. But really nothing else that I've done so far has been able to match that. And that could really get me down. I'm like, well, my best is done. You know, what's the point of carrying on if I'm never going to write a song since that? And I've written tons and tons of songs since that one, a lot of which I think are really cool. But none of them really get the same reaction. But I'm not really worried about that, because what I'm more concerned about is moving forward and improving myself on a day-to-day basis. You know, am I working hard enough? Am I writing enough songs? You know, if I'm not writing a whole lot of songs in a year, then obviously I'm not going to improve. How's my playing? What is my network like? Like, those are the things that I'm thinking of. I'm not worried about trying to get better than that one thing that I did. I'm more thinking about how to improve myself on a daily basis, because then, you know, I end up somewhere like this. You know, how I could never imagine that I would be sitting in Germany, in Berlin, speaking to you guys from the other side of the world. But it just came out of hard work. You know, it came out of putting one foot in front of the other every day, dealing with my disappointments and the most exciting moments in a way that was healthy and didn't get me down, and just trying to motivate myself to move forward every day, and improve myself. And this is what you want to be able to think about, you know, even on a weekly or monthly or yearly basis. Like, how much has your average changed over the last year, over the past 5 years, over in your entire career? Like, is your average song better than it was a year ago? Is your average gig better than it was a year ago? You know, on average, are you earning more money over a year than you this year than you earned last year? You know, what changed? What can you do different? Where do you think you can improve? And instead of looking for that one thing that's going to change your life, that one person who's going to open the door for you, that one song, rather be able to look at it as the whole. Like, how is everything that I'm doing fitting together? Is it moving me forward? If it isn't moving me forward, what can I do to change? Because that's much easier than just trying to go for that one shot, which is either going to make you or break you. And that can be very frustrating. You know, if you think about it in terms of your average, there's lots of little changes you can make, even on a daily basis, which will improve things, where it's very hard to create that piece of luck for yourself on purpose. You will get luck. The harder you work, the luckier you will get. But it's about allowing yourself the space sort of in your mind to do that work without getting yourself down or without having unrealistic expectations. So yeah, that's sort of the introduction, and I just wanted you guys to try keep that idea in mind as we talk through the rest of the stuff, because that's really where I'm coming from. You know, I've learned over the long period of time that I've been doing this, that it's all about the small changes you can make and how you can develop yourself. So, and everything that I do sort of comes out of that idea that I've just told you. So in terms of how to build your career and how to work on it, this is a little math equation that I like to think about. You have your career, and what is your career? Your career equals art plus audience. Of course, you can make art on your own, you can make music on your own, whatever. You could do other art. You can be a painter or a poet or a photographer or anything, or a sculptor, and you can do all that stuff for yourself. But if you want to have a career, you must have an audience, and you must have people essentially who are going to pay money for you to do your art. And that audience can be anything. It can be your fan base, it can be people paying you to make music for TV or film. The audience is all of that sort of stuff. But this, you have to be working on each element of this. You have to be working on your career, you have to be working on your art, and you have to be working on your audience. And I'm going to go through each of those 3 sections now. So you need to take a sip of water. The real question you got to start thinking about is, what do you want? You know, a lot of us want to be, we think of fame and we think of it as, you know, we're lying in the pool, drinking, sipping on something, a cocktail or a Hennessy, or I don't know what, I don't know what they're drinking in songs these days, you know. Back in my youth, everyone was sipping on Hennessy. And that's what you think about. But I want you to try do something, just for a moment, like, think, what would your day actually be like if you were successful? You know, I'll give you an example for me. You know, if I think of being successful, I think I can wake up in the morning, I got food in my fridge, really, like this sort of real, just basic practical stuff. I've got food in my fridge, I have a breakfast, maybe if I want to be fit, I go for a jog, I come home, and I step into my studio, because my studio is in my house or my apartment, and I just write music for the morning. You know, I spend 3 or 4 hours just writing stuff. Then I break and I have some lunch, and either I do some work admin stuff, maybe speak with some artists that I'm collaborating with, maybe I have a label, speak to my label, speak to my booker, maybe we're planning a tour. If I really like doing workshops, so work a little bit on the next workshop that I'm giving. And then come 5 or 6 in the evening, I'm done with work, eat some dinner, spend some time with my family, maybe listen to some new music that I've got, read some books, because that's stuff I love doing. You know, that's my day. And that's what I dream of as being successful. You know, maybe in a yearly basis, I'm getting to do some tours, I'm doing these workshops, maybe I've written a book on this sort of topic, I'm releasing albums every year or 2, I do some collaborations, all this stuff is in my life. And that's what I imagine. And then the question is, how are you going to get that? You know, what would it take? You know, once you have this picture in your mind of exactly what your day would be like, you want to start thinking, well, what would you need for that to happen? You know, I can't have that life if I don't have somewhere to live, if I don't have some equipment in my studio, if I don't have the contacts, if I haven't written any songs, if I don't have the experience of knowing how to book tours or knowing how to collaborate with other artists. All of these things would need to happen. You know, how much money does it take to have that sort of lifestyle? It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, but I still need to pay rent. Maybe I've bought a car. I want to upgrade my gear every now and then. I need to do some traveling. Like, how much really does that take? And you need to be able to think about that stuff, because that gives you a real goal. It's not a goal of, I want to be famous and I want to drive in a limo and I want to have parties with all the beautiful people and I want to drink all the expensive drinks and hang out with all the stars. Because you can do that, and if that is your dream, then that is your dream. But you need to know exactly what it takes to have that. How much money do you need to be earning to live in New York City and just party every day? You would have had to have earned enough money not to have to work. And even though, like, a lot of people are partying in their music videos or everything seems great, you can pretty sure most days they're working on their career the same way that anyone works on at any job. They're not waking up in the morning and just getting drunk all the time. Maybe, yeah, they're having people around for a braai on the weekend and they're having a great party with all their friends, and maybe their friends are all famous musicians, but a lot of the time these guys are working, men and women are working in between. This is the stuff that we need to be able to think about when we start planning our careers, because if you don't know how it works, you won't be able to build it. You know, if you wanted to build a car, you can't just say, I want to build a car. You have to know what's in the car. Because if you don't, you know, it just remains a dream in your head. So how do you do this planning? You know, what you need to do, and what I always do, is I think about what I want, exactly how I've just explained it to you, and then I try to work back the steps. Because obviously, even if you know exactly all those things that you would need to have this life that you dream of, there is a question of how do you get them. And you don't always get them in one go. You often have to, you know, I might say, I want to have a state-of-the-art studio in my house, it's not something that I can just go out and get. I need to start from somewhere. Maybe and this was my experience, I started with one microphone and one little sound card. And then a few years later I got another microphone, and then a few years later I got some cool monitors, and then slowly I now have my little home studio that I'm sitting in now. It's really small. It's the size of a big cupboard. But it's part of my dream. I have a studio in my apartment. I record my own stuff here, and I write, and I do record some other people. And it's very small, but it's part of my dream. And maybe in a few years' time, it will be twice as big. Maybe I'll be living in a bigger apartment as things develop. But you have to know that progression that you're going to take. And if you can start right at the end with the greatest studio ever built, think about all that gear. Think, do I know how to use the gear? Do I know what gear I would want? How should I start this? And you can work it all the way back to starting where you are today. And how you do that is you basically ask a simple question. What is the one thing you can do? What is the one thing you can do in the next 5 years that will help you achieve your dream? What is it? Yeah, maybe it is to have a super successful record. Maybe it is to have a studio. Maybe it is to be signed to a label. In that case, what is the one thing you can do this year to help you achieve that dream? Maybe it is do a sound engineering course. Maybe it is approach all the labels or release a single, on any label just to start you on that progress. Maybe it is I just need to do a little tour, or maybe I need to improve my singing or guitar playing skills. In that case, what can you do this month to help you achieve that goal? Maybe you need to see what sound course is available for you. If you need to pay for a course and you can't afford it, maybe you need to find a job so that in 6 months you can save up the money for the sound engineering course, and on and on. And again, what can you do this week to help you achieve that goal? What can you do today to help you achieve that goal? What can you do right now? Right now you're watching this workshop, which is a part of whatever you see as your grand idea. And you can literally take this and these questions and write them down. Make cards for yourself. And it is that you have the big dream, you have the 5-year goal, the 1-year goal, the 1-month goal, the weekly goal, today's goal, and the right now. What can you do? I have a little card on my desk behind here that says, what can I do right now to help me achieve my dreams? And often it is just carry on writing. It's just a reminder that what I'm doing right now, even if it's frustrating, it fits into a bigger picture. And that is the real benefit of having a system like this, where you've actually sat down and thought about what you're doing and you've written it all out, is that you know what it is. When I wake up every morning, I know what I'm doing. I've written all the stuff down. I know what I want to do. I know where I want to be in 5 or 10 years' time. And I've worked it all back. And I know that when I get up in the morning, I'm doing what I need, the most important thing I need to do for my goal. I don't have to think about it. I've worked it all out. I look at my goals every few months, and I reevaluate and see how I'm doing. But I know that what I'm doing, I don't have to think about it. I know that if I wanted to go out and have a few beers at night, I think, is that going to affect what I'm going to do tomorrow? And if it is, maybe I have an alcohol-free beer. Or maybe I just don't go out for as late as I would have otherwise, because I know what's important to me and I don't have to think about it. If someone comes with another project that sounds cool, but it's kind of interesting, but it's stressful and it will distract me from my goal, I don't do it, because I know why I'm doing what I'm doing every day. I know I'm doing it because it's a piece of the puzzle towards my really great goal. And just working this stuff out and writing it down and putting it somewhere where you can look at it quite frequently can really change your perspective on what your career is. It also means you kind of get a sort of power or being able to take responsibility of your career and your progress. It's not so much a matter anymore of waiting for someone to come and help you. You've worked out what you've needed to do. And you don't need to find the one person who's going to come and be the magic bullet. Sure, you might need to, one of your goals might be to find the right contacts or to get on the right label, but you can think, well, what do I need to do to get on that label? Well, maybe I need to have proved myself in some way. Okay, let me prove myself first. because that I can do this year, and next year I can start approaching labels. So once you do that, it breaks down what seems to be an impossible task, and it breaks it down into manageable pieces. It's like eating the apple one bite at a time. You don't just put the whole apple in your mouth and try and swallow it. It takes some time to eat it. And in the same way, developing your career and moving towards your goal it happens in much the same way. As I've just said, a good plan, knowing what you are doing and why you're doing it, it makes it much easier to make decisions. You know what's a good idea and you know what isn't a great idea. It keeps you free of distractions. You don't get sidetracked into other stuff. And in the end, all of that gives you more time to focus on your music, which is the real point here, because you don't have to think about why you're doing it. You don't have to spend time trying to remember is this a good idea, or is this a good idea, or think about stuff. You've made your decisions. You can move on with your day. And obviously this is something that you want to reevaluate from time to time. The plan is always evolving. So as you gain experience, you get a new perspective on things. The perspective automatically gives you new ideas. After you collaborate with someone for the first time, you will suddenly know what it's like to collaborate. And that will give you a new perspective on it, and will give you new ideas of stuff that you can do. And those ideas will lead to new plans, and when you put those plans into place and you go through them, it will give you new experience. So you get into this really great cycle of just learning and trying new things, and that is the thing that takes you forward. That's the petrol in your tank that's going to move you through your career. But it also changes your plans. You might decide, and this has happened to me, a couple of years down the line, you're like, I did all this stuff, and maybe what I thought was what I wanted. I just wanted to tour all the time and play shows all the time, but actually I don't like being away from home because I've done it now and it's fun, but it's not my thing. Okay, so I want to spend more time at home. Then how should I change my priorities? Should I become more of a producer? Should I become more of a songwriter for other people? Should I focus more on other business elements? Like for me, maybe it's the PR or doing more workshops. So this plan is always changing. But the more you work on stuff and the more you understand why you've worked on it, you can really make more informed decisions for yourself. No audience equals no career. You got to have people to pay you for what you're doing. It's just the unvarnished truth of it. And a lot of us, we focus on our art, we maybe focus on our connections, but a lot of the time we're not putting a lot of thought into how do you actually develop a career, or you do want to know, but you're really not sure, it's a mystery. I can say from my experience, I've always noticed there's some really amazingly charismatic musicians. I don't know how they do it, but they just seem to attract people to them. And some of us, some of you out there will be like that, just that automatically works for you, but a lot won't. It will be like, how does that man or woman create so much popularity around them? And some of them do it naturally, and for the rest of us, we really need to be able to think of it. And even for the people who do it naturally, understanding the process of how someone becomes a fan or becomes a member of your audience is really useful in order to get in allowing you to get the best out of that situation. So the most important part of your audience is the fan. And a fan is obviously a fan. We would like to have fans, and we are all fans. We are fans of music. And so this is the important thing to remember, that fans are just people. There are people like us. They could be doing anything. They could be anywhere. So I'll come back to this slide in a second. But you're dealing with people. And like all of us, people have emotions and they have expectations. And building your audience is a lot about understanding that. But before I get into it, I also just want to show the real actual financial value of having fans. Because these days, so much emphasis is placed on getting streams and on getting viral videos and all this stuff, but just on a one-to-one basis, how much value you can even have from a single fan. So one CD sale, for those who are printing CDs, or a couple of downloads, or a couple of t-shirt or sales for ticket sales for shows, is as much as over 1,000 plays on Apple Music or Google Play on Spotify, and more than nearly 3,500 plays on YouTube. So in terms of actually gaining a financial benefit from your music, selling one CD to one person is going to beat getting 3,500 video streams on YouTube. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's that when you're building a career, especially at the beginning, you need to be building up both of those streams at the same time. Eventually, if and when you become successful and you're getting thousands or millions of streams on Spotify, obviously that is a great benefit to get to. But as I'll show you in the next slide, having a few fans, maybe 100 or 200 fans, can still have a massive financial benefit for you. So here's how we look at it. One fan buys one CD. It's 100 Rand in your pocket. Now we need to look over the long term, because we're building careers here. We're not just going for the quick win. Over 10-year period, a fan buys 3 CDs. You can expect that. If you're a fan of a band, you're going to buy every album that comes out, at least for like a lengthy period of time. So maybe your favorite band over 3 years releases 3 CDs. You buy them all for 100 Rand, so that you've spent 300 Rand on that artist. Maybe you also bought a T-shirt, and now you spend 500 Rand. Maybe they came to your town fairly often, so beyond the CDs and T-shirt, you also went to see them. So over 10 years, you went to see 6 shows of your favorite band, which is also maybe to be expected. So that you've now spent, over 10 years, you spent 1,000 Rand on that band, or a fan has spent 1,000 Rand on you, buying a T-shirt, buying CDs, coming to your shows. Now multiply that to 10 fans, 10,000 Rand. Sorry, the third one should be 100 fans. 100 fans. If you have 100 fans over 10 years, they spend 100,000 Rand with you. If you have 1,000 fans who over 10 years buy the CDs, buy T-shirts, come to your shows, it's 1 million Rand. It's real money from real people. And this is the sort of thing you can build up. You don't even have to be super famous for this. Those 1,000 people can, it doesn't have to be millions and millions of people to be successful. As long as you're constantly producing, as long as you're constantly being of value to your fans, and some fans will come in and some fans will come out, you can really build a small little business for yourself. And without having to have the smash hit, you just have to show your value. The way I feel about my music is that I don't make music that's ever going to be a chart hit. It's kind of niche, left of center, but there's people out there in the world who will like it, and my job is to find them, and my job is to offer them something of value, and then we build a relationship together. I create the music, and they help me maintain my career. If you thought that your favorite band needed a little bit, if you bought their CD, means they could make the CD, of course you would do it, because you want to hear more music that they're going to make. And you build a relationship with these people. They're human beings. They're out there. They want to enjoy music. They want to feel like their lives have been changed a little bit by the art that you're making. And you want to make the art, and you want to have that effect on people. And you do it together. It's not you're not here and your fans are completely isolated from you. You're part of the same ecosystem, you could say. You're part of the same family in a way. And these, like I said, these fans can be anyone. They can be a fan of your music. They can be a fan of your professional attitude. They might be a film director or an editor, or in any other part of the profession. Or they might just like how you go about stuff. Maybe they like your music a bit, but they like what you stand for, and they will support you because of that as well. And they could also be a fan of you as a person. You met them in the street. They were like, I met this musician. I'd always heard of them. Such a cool person. Totally going to get the next CD, or will recommend you to other people. So it's important to think of that. People can be a fan of you in multiple ways. So they could be anyone, anywhere, doing anything. They could be anywhere in the world. They could be in the music industry. They could be other artists, producers, DJs, bookers, promoters. Or they could be working in other media. They could be journalists, or they could be playlist curators, or in the film and TV and ad industries. And this is important to remember, because fans obviously can buy your CDs and they can come to your shows, but a fan can put your music in an advert. A fan can put your music in film. A fan can ask you to write music for a theater show. A fan can write an interview about you. You know, when journalists, and I can say this from experience, when you want to do an interview with someone, you really push to do the interviews with the artists that you are fans of. You know, that's always your dream. Part of the cool thing about being a journalist is that it gives you a reason to call anyone up. And so if you're a fan of someone, why wouldn't you interview them about their new album? So fans are that part of your world, and you want to be able to get the benefit out of developing those relationships with them. So yeah, like I said, your fans can stream your songs come to your shows and buy your merch. Yeah, they can also be in other bands. Maybe they want to collaborate with you. Maybe they're on a label and they want to release your tracks. They want to book you for shows. So when you think of building your fan base, everyone you meet is a potential fan. Everyone you meet has some potential benefit for you down the road, and you have a potential benefit for them. It's not a one-way street. It's not like everyone you meet, you have to see what you can get out of them. It's just be a cool person. Show that you're professional. Keep working on your art so that when people do come around and need something from you, you have a lot to show for it. Let them hear about you from the outside. And that's how you start building your audience. So how do you make fans? This is a big question, and it's also part of the great mystery. But the truth in the end is that you make fans the same way that you make friends. So I've been speaking about this a little bit now, but now let's get into the details. So how do you make a friend? Two people are introduced by a mutual friend or interest. So imagine you're at a party, you see your friend's chatting to someone else, you go and chat to your friend's like, oh, have you met so-and-so? You've been introduced. It could also be that you go to a party and you see someone who's wearing a t-shirt from your favorite band, and you're next to them at the bar or something, you're like, hey, I dig your t-shirt, I love that band too. Suddenly you get to know each other. The next step is the education step. So you get into a conversation, you get to know each other. Oh yeah, I like that too, I like this music, I do this sort of stuff. You have maybe more friends in common, and you get a cool vibe off each other, and you move into what is called the permission stage, where you then give each other permission to contact each other. So you basically swap phone numbers. Would you like to hang out sometime? And this is a really important phase, especially we'll come to in the fan making process, because once you've given someone permission, once someone gives you permission to contact them, it means they've opened the door to create that relationship. You know, a lot of from an advertising perspective, a lot of advertising that you see on the TV or radio or the internet, it's what they call interruption marketing. So they're trying to interrupt whatever you're doing to try get you to focus on what they want you to focus on. Same as for like viral videos and music videos, all that stuff. They're just trying to show you like big flash. So you're like, oh, whatever else I'm doing, whatever else I was doing at this point is not that important. I must focus on this now. Like that's what they're trying to do, the advertisers, that is. And there's so much of it out there that we're just being bombarded by adverts all the time. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And we're doing it as well. We're saying, look at me, please, look at me, listen to my music. And sometimes it's very difficult for people to get in and notice you amongst all of that stuff that's going on. But when someone gives you permission and says, please contact me. Yes, it's cool to contact me. And your email ends up in their mailing, in their email box, in the inbox, or on your WhatsApp. They know, oh yeah, I asked this person to send me something. I asked them to send me news about shows. I asked them to send me news about new releases. They're way more ready to open it up and look at it. They might even have been waiting for it. And that's a completely different level of communication. You're not fighting against everyone else. You're actually in there. You're in someone's living room. You're in their kitchen with them, chatting to them. It's not like you're building a billboard outside their house. And that is I think the crucial element of this, is getting to that point. And then afterwards, it comes a matter of nurturing. You know, when on a friends level, you become close friends and you rely on each other. You know, you maybe do each other a favor, give each other's lifts home. If you go out for dinner and one of you pays for the other, knowing that the other one will pay them the next time around. And that's what you get that's really when you've built a strong fan base, where your fans will buy your CD before it comes out. They'll buy tickets for your show before you're there. They'll order your t-shirts online because they know that the more they do that, the more chance there is that you're going to create more art for them. And there is this symbiotic relationship between the two of you now, between you and your fan base, that you are working together to create the situation, and you rely on each other. You rely on them for your career, and they rely on you for the special thing that you create, which they know they can't get anywhere else. And so how that looks like when you're becoming a fan is, it's very similar. There's the introduction phase. You discover an artist from a friend or situation. Someone says, hey, listen to this, or you're in a shop and you hear a song, you're like, what is that song? You Shazam it, or you ask the person behind the counter what song it is, or you phone into the radio station, or you hear it at a club, and you've heard about this artist. And the education phase, you go and find out more about them. You listen to more music, you maybe go to some of their shows. Now you have a bit of an idea who they are, and then you give them permission to send you more information. You join their mailing list, you follow them on social media, and you begin to interact with them. You've said, please come into my world, not in this anonymous way, but you've actually gone out and asked them for more information. And you're now part of their world. You're part of their, what you can call the fan ecosystem. And now you're all working together. They're making music, but their career only exists if you and everyone else are there to pay attention and to support them. And then you move into the nurturing stage, where you're buying you're sharing your artist with your friends. You're promoting the artist for them. You're buying merch. If you're in the music industry, maybe you're booking them for shows. Maybe you're now you've moved into advertising. You're asking them to write music for your ads. And this is the real, you're both really helping each other out now. You're both building something together. And so you can see becoming a fan is like becoming a friend. And that psychology is really important, because so often we just expect people to like our music. We almost demand it of them. You wouldn't go out into the street and just harass some stranger and get them to buy your CD. Maybe you'd go and chat to them, say, hey, I see you walking up the street every day. What's going on? And then maybe the next time you chat to them, you'll be like, oh, by the way, I'm a musician. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And then maybe they end up at one of your shows. And then you can say to them, hey, I've got a new CD out. Would you be interested? It's not there should be no expectation for everyone in the world to be paying attention to your music. You have to develop that relationship. You have to put the time and the work and give it the space to grow. It's not something that can ever happen straight away. It's like going up to someone in the street and saying, please take me home and cook me dinner. It's not realistic. People run away, and I think fans also can run away in a way when they feel artists are too pushy. So it's a great thing to keep in mind. And again, like we spoke about before, what is your average fan interaction like? Think about that. Learn from everything that you're doing and find the best way to interact with people to draw them into your world as an artist. And yeah, we've spoken about this a lot now. So from the artist perspective, I've spoken about it from the fan perspective, but this is from the artist perspective. Introduction. You have to create something that shows you have something in common with your fans. You don't know who your fans are. This is a very general idea. From the beginning, you're making music, which already shows your music fans in general will have a potential interest. It's the genre you play. It's how you present yourself. Maybe it's doing some cover videos on YouTube. Maybe it's collaborating with other artists. Maybe it's being associated with the right labels or the right venues. You play in this venue, people who like your music are likely to be there. It's all this sort of stuff. It's just how you position yourself, where people who are looking for music like yours will be able to find you. And once they're in that space, it's letting them know more about you. It's presenting your music to them in interesting ways. It's just a whole lot of different things that you can do to draw people in. The show, playing lots of shows, going on tour, collaborating with people, being in being interviewed, being on the media, perhaps even being on the radio. But all these things are aimed at showing that you are around, that people can just learn that you're part of the scene, that you're creating music, that you're creating this kind of music, that you're this type of person, that you have this sort of attitude, that you're connected with these sorts of people. Again, it can be a slow process, but just everything that you're doing creates an impression. You're like, how hard a worker are you? Like when you're talking about promoting to your fans within the industry, like how professional are you? How hard do you work? How much are you progressing? Like, do they feel like it's worth investing their time and energy in you? And it's the same for fans. Like, are you around? If I'm buying the CD and I'm going to really enjoy it, do I get to see you play live? Or is there going to be 1 year before another CD or 5 years before another CD? You know, just giving people the impression that there is something here to be a part of. Then you move into the permission stage where you actually, I mean, the simple way of thinking about this is just your mailing list or your WhatsApp group. Get people's, and this is the real valuable thing, is once people get to know you and you start interacting, get them onto your mailing list, get them onto your WhatsApp group. Get a way to communicate with them that takes you out of just the randomness of social media and the press and just playing gigs. Get people onto your list so now they're in your phone book. Whenever something's happening, you can let them know. And finally, to nurturing is when you start asking them to buy stuff for you. Like, you ask them to start supporting your career. Maybe you're asking them to help pre-buy your CD so that you can print it. Maybe you want to do some house shows and ask them to bring their friends to the show. Those are the channels, and you need to learn how to move your music through those channels in order to connect with your audience, because otherwise it's just like walking down the street. You're just another person on the street. But all of these channels already have their specific audiences who are in the way looking for you, and you just need to put your stuff there for them to find them. And in the context of that, the world is a big place. You know, it's not approaching any type of media or any type of artist to collaborate with or playing in any type of venue. You know, it's finding the places that are specific for you, so you need to figure out where you fit in. And this is a real practical effort that you guys can make. This is a real practical exercise, rather. Step 1, make a list of artists that you sound like. Really, like, get out a piece of paper, write down 7 artists who you think you sound like. Then ask your friends who they think you sound like. Should say, who do your friends think you sound like? Ask people who know your music but don't necessarily know what you like. You know, don't ask people who are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Ask people who might give you some diverse opinions. Like, for example, like for me, I wouldn't say that I'm a huge Coldplay fan. I don't mind them. I think they're okay, but I'm not a fan. But a lot of people, I'm a singer-songwriter, and a lot of people say, oh, you sound like Coldplay. It could be just because I'm a white dude singing melancholic songs, you know. And even though I wouldn't think to promote my music to Coldplay fans, it's worthwhile keeping that in mind, because obviously people associated with that, and people who are Coldplay fans might think, oh, this is my sort of music. So when I'm trying to promote my music, I need to keep that in mind and promote it towards those sort of people. So don't discount anything. If you find a lot of people think you sound like such and such an artist who you don't really like that artist, it doesn't matter. You know, that it could be that those fans like you and are going to help you build your career. So don't just chuck it out. So you go through this process and you come up with a list of maybe 10 to 15 artists. And then you go onto Spotify. I don't know if everyone is using Spotify. There is even if you don't use it, this is a really worthwhile exercise. Just sign up. You can get a free account. Because in Spotify, there is the fans also like section, which is, if you don't know, it's where Spotify will tell you if you like Gil Hockman, these are other artists that you might like. And this is where you're going to really find a gold mine of information. So, for example, here, if the fans also like section, and then we'll give you generally 20 other artists people who are listening to Cubs That Are Small, what other artists are they listening to? So you're going to go and look at each of these sections for each of the artists in your list that you have thought up, and you're going to basically make a sheet like this. So this is some research that I did a few weeks ago for a more electronic project that I'm working on. I just want to have an idea where I fit in. And in the top, in the red section, you write in that top column, and really this is just you can do this on a spreadsheet if you have access to a computer, but you just as easily do it on a piece of paper. So you just get a ruler and a pencil and make some columns, and in the top line, in that red block, you put the artists from your list that you just worked out, those 10 to 15 artists that you sound like, and underneath, go into Spotify and list all the recommended artists in that Spotify shows up. Just write them all down there, but anyone who gets repeated, put a little red, you can see there, maybe if you look closely enough, I put a little red dot next to some of the artists. Those are artists that are being repeated, that are coming up in different columns. So you go through all those lists, and if you find that some artists are coming up more than once, but they weren't in your original list, just make a new list with them. So you can see that's on the right side there, new artists to research. And then you go research those artists too. So you end up with this long list. Okay, there you can see the small dots of people that I've coming up more than once. And then you go and you make a new page of all the new artists to research. So these are the artists that you wouldn't have thought of and no one recommended, but they've just come up in the recommends more than once. And you research them too. So you come up with this long list of artists, some of which are repeating maybe once or maybe quite a few times. And in my case with this research, you can see like the top artists had been repeated like 17 or 18 times. And what this list is, I hope this has made sense up to now, but you now have what you could call your genre artists. And this is not genres with a name. It's not a genre that it's very specific in that it's rock or pop or some subgenre. It's just people who are most likely to like your music. These are the top artists that they're listening to. And this is when you start thinking about how you fit into the world and how you're going to start looking for your fan base and how you're going to start finding people who are into your music. Having a list like this is really a gold mine, because it means you're not just wandering around aimlessly. You actually have like a focused starting point where you can start looking at labels and media and other artists and venues. It's not just totally random. It's actually, you have a good idea that the people who are going to these venues, or listening to this music from these labels, or listening to these artists, have a good chance of liking the music that you're making too. So once you've made that list, we're going to put that aside for just a moment. But also in Spotify, there are sections called Discovered On and Where People Listen. And you'll be able to see it here. This is in the About section. Discovered On is the playlist that people are being listened to on, where people are finding out their music. And Where People Listen is literally the locations. And these are both really useful pieces of information to have. So once you've got those top 20 artists, these ones, once you have this list, for each of these people, go and see what playlists they're being listened to on and where people are listening. Because it could be that there's a town in Spain somewhere that is really into your genre, and it makes it then really worthwhile to look at the venues in that town. Who's playing there? What other artists are playing there? Maybe some of those artists you could communicate with. Maybe you could go on a tour of Europe with one of those artists. Maybe you could, if that was too much at the moment, maybe you could just collaborate with them, put tracks together over the internet. So this is now you're starting to really build an idea of artists and also geography of where your music is being listened to. And then obviously also the playlists, which I'm going to speak about for a second now. So very, very briefly, just to know what you're looking at when you look at those playlists. Spotify playlists are broken down into these general categories. Algorithmic, these are the playlists that Spotify's machine are working out. They're looking at what everyone's listening to, and according to that, they are making these automatic recommendations of other artists. There are also Spotify editorial playlists. These are playlists that people actually working at Spotify are putting together. there's just big like mixtapes of what they think is cool for like different sorts of genres, but also different sorts of moods. There are people you would need to contact Spotify and ask to get on those playlists. But the next two, the curated and the personal playlists, are the ones we really, when those come up in the Discovered On section, those are the ones we really want to look at, because these curated are people out there making playlists professionally to get people to listen to them. Sometimes you might have to pay to get on the playlist, but they are running playlist businesses. And then this personal playlist, just maybe individuals. Like I made a Spotify playlist for my holiday, and I put a bunch of songs on it. Those two, you wanna when you see those playlists come up, and you can see it by who made the playlist. You can just click on that link, go take a look at the user, see if they're making other playlists, or see if they've just made one or two playlists. And the curated ones, you can really try and find contact details for those people. And try get onto those playlists. And even if they don't look like cool and interesting playlists, the fact that you're being put on playlists with artists that you think you fit in with means that the Spotify algorithm will pay attention to it and maybe start automatically placing you with those artists. I'll give you an example that came out of this research. Was that one playlist I found, which was really popular, was actually like a book delivery service in Argentina, who were making playlists to go along with their books, and that they would then, when someone bought a book, they would send them a link to the playlist. But the people on the playlist were all in my genre. So to be on that playlist, it doesn't matter who made it, but Spotify will notice that I'm with all these other artists. And the algorithm will start maybe recommending me to other people who are listening to those artists. So it's really worthwhile doing a bit of research into this, and finding ways to get your music linked on Spotify. I can't say exactly how it works on Google or Apple Music, but yeah, Spotify is really, I think, the top dog when it comes to making playlists. So a little bit of research can really be a great benefit to you in terms of getting more streams. And the personal playlists, this is really important when it comes to your fans. So if you have this fan base and you have a new release coming out, you can say to your fans, hey guys, my new single's out. Won't you guys all make playlists and just drop my song into the playlist and help me promote it? You know, save it to your profile, put it into the playlist. And Spotify is noticing those too. You know, encourage your fans to share their playlists on social media and stuff. And especially once you have that relationship and you're in that nurturing stage with your fan base, people will be very excited to help you do that. You can even do stuff like, hey, won't you guys make playlists with songs that you think are associated with this song? And then again, you get more information of how you're fitting in with people, like where do they think your music fits in, and you can feed that back into your research situation. And this final playlist, it's just release playlists. Like people will put together soundtracks, playlists of movie soundtracks, or mostly movie or television show soundtracks. Those, you'll see them. They're made by personal users, but you won't get on there unless you actually had a song on that TV show or movie. So you can just ignore those. So what do you do now with all these results? Sorry, I know this is a lot of info, guys. But yeah, this just a quick announcement is that obviously these webinars, these masterclasses will all be up on the Old Mutual YouTube channel. So if you missed anything on this or you want to watch it again, I don't know when they'll be up. I guess in a few days' time, or something like that. But yeah, keep an eye out for that if you do want to come back and look at this stuff again. So what you want to do now you have all this information, what you can do is create a research center. It sounds like a big deal, but it's not really. It's an easy thing to do. You can get a lot of information on it, but it's not like you need to build a house with lots of computers in it. So what you do is create a bunch of new social media profiles, and these are research profiles. And why this is important to remember is that you're not using these for posting. You're not using them for liking or sharing or whatever. You're just using them for looking. And the reason why you want to make new ones and not use your personal ones is that we're going to use these profiles to follow all the artists that you've tagged as being important. You're going to follow them on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, on whatever, on YouTube. Follow everyone, because then when you log on and look at the news feeds on these profiles, what you're seeing is your genre. You're seeing who is active, how they're talking to their fans, what venues they're playing in, what labels they're being released on, what stuff they're interested in. Maybe they're promoting new artists that they like that you've never heard of. Check out those artists, follow them as well, get them into your feed. It allows you really like a cool, broad view of your genre. And once you have all those people, you can then go back. If you find that you want to interact or communicate, you can go back into your artist page and then start communicating. But this will allow you to build like a huge database of information that will become helpful in your career. If artists are being interviewed on certain radio stations, if they're being interviewed in certain magazines, you can pick it up. You can be like, oh, here's the link. Go look at the website. Who's the journalist? Save the journalist to another list. Make a note. Oh, this is a journalist. When my album comes out, I should send them some information. You don't have to like wander around blindly in the industry trying to find a journalist. You can look at the top artists, and also like as you start bringing lower artists into this feed, like artists that are maybe closer to your level, put everyone in there, and you can see. Maybe there's one journalist from in Joburg or in Cape Town who are really the main journalist in your genre, and you make a point of developing a relationship with them. And it's very hard sometimes to find this stuff out just by being around. And this is a real powerful tool if you have all this information in one place, just to keep looking and see what comes up. Follow everyone. So this last point at the bottom. Artists, labels, media, venues, note their fan interactions, all this stuff. Just keep looking and see what comes up, and you'll get an idea of maybe the people you really want to get in contact with and build a relationship with. And the same goes for locations. Like, go look at your locations. What venues are in those locations? Which artists are playing there? What media is from there? Link those into your research center as well. And then also on YouTube, like which of your artists are featuring in playlists? Who is making those playlists? What other artists are featured in those playlists? Maybe you should be following some of those artists too. Yeah, again, go back to Research Center. Now you have this real, like deep and powerful amount of information that over time, especially when you're keeping in touch with it over months or over years, can really provide a lot of cool information for you. It might be that you see an artist is coming on tour or is looking for collaborations or something, and you can put the word out there for a support slot or something like that. And very quickly, a couple other small places to do research. There is a website called discogs.com, which just is really about artist releases, but you can go in there and find out what labels artists have been released on. I mean, here's Black Coffee, for example. He has a ton of stuff on labels probably all over the world. You can go in here, make a list out of these labels, and know that if you have a track which you think is close to what he does, maybe those are the labels you want to be approaching. Instead of just wondering instead of trying to get hold of Black Coffee, you can just get hold of the people that release his music. And you can Google anyone and you can search anyone on Discogs. Some artists will have more, some artists will have less, but go through it and see all the labels. You can run it in the same way that you did for getting that second level of artists. Put all your artists through here, see which labels are coming up often, and mark those as labels that you want to develop a relationship with. And the same way, there's sites called Songkick and Bands in Town, which are for touring. You can go see what past shows people have done, see where they're playing, what towns they're going to, what venues they're playing in, and sort of build a picture of more of a picture of what locations you should be looking at. And once this is done, we go back into our fan building process. Introduce yourself, which is really just letting people know that you're there, like liking, commenting, sharing, and most importantly, complimenting. Like everyone loves a compliment. It's the easiest way to get someone's attention. Just tell them what you think they're doing is great. Really, it's super simple. You don't talk about yourself. Just say, man, I love your stuff, or I love this track, or I love what you're doing. Can't wait to see you when you come through on tour. All that stuff. let them know that you're there. People pay attention to that sort of stuff. You might not think it, but if that comes up a couple of times, people will be like, oh, okay, this person's really into what I'm doing. That's really cool. I really appreciate it. And then once it's happening and you've had some interaction and you have some feedback, let them know a little bit more about yourself. But do it in a form that is asking for something which is easy for them to give. Not, hey man, won't you release my track, or won't you take me on tour with you? Just maybe ask for advice. Hey, I in a similar situation to you, I want to know how you did that thing on your track. How did you record that vocal? How do you go about asking people to collaborate with you? Stuff that makes them feel like they have really something to offer, like they've built their career to a point where they have advice to give, and it automatically makes them feel better about themselves. It's not just take. In the question, you're giving something. You're giving them a feeling of having achieved something, and what you get in return is the information. And so that's always something to keep in mind. Like, you don't just want to be trying to take from people. You want to be able to make it always a balanced sort of interaction. And only then, once you have this sort of conversation going, ask them, would it be cool for me to send you a track? If it's someone on your level, would you be interested in maybe doing a track together sometime? Before just jumping into that, build the relationship first. They might not think of you as a friend, but they might think of you as some sort of a professional professional acquaintance who they're happy to talk to because they know how you're working, they have an idea of what you're doing, and they'll be open to sort of a next level of communication, not just you automatically want something from them. You're automatically expecting them to lift your career up to wherever theirs is. It's just not practical. People can't do it. And also people feel pressure. They're like, oh, this person just wants something from me, and it's often a turn-off. So build it up the same way you would do a friend. Like if you want someone to be your friend, you don't phone them and immediately ask them for a favor. That comes down the line when you know each other and you can trust each other. And once you've moved past that point, and this obviously goes for other artists, it goes for labels, it goes for media people, it goes for anyone who you want to interact, it goes for fans. Once you've moved you move through this progression, and then you come to the nurturing phase where there isn't clear mutual benefit to working together. Maybe you have artists who you work with a lot, or labels you work with a lot, or fans who often buy your stuff, or journalists who are always interested to do a review of your work. Then it's a very equal relationship, and that's the point where you really want to get to. And on that note, we often, while we always are looking to sort of the famous artists to try lift us up, we often miss out on a really important thing, which is the benefit of interacting with what I call level appropriate artists, like people at your level or just above. And like kind of a really rough rule I would work this out on is, say if you have 1,000 followers, however many followers you have on your social media, add a 0 to that, and it's everyone at that number and below, between the two of you. And the benefit of working with people like this is that they're also trying to make it. They're also looking for recognition. They're also looking for people to give them a hand up. And like I said in the beginning, like when we work together on stuff, it makes it way easier to progress. They, for a start, will definitely appreciate your interest. If they don't have hundreds of people shouting at them every day, telling them how amazing they are, they will be really excited that you got in touch with them. It's also an opportunity to learn at lower stakes. There's not a risk of doing a collaboration with someone that you don't really know. There's not a risk in trying stuff out or doing a gig together. Gig doesn't go so well, or the experience isn't so great. It doesn't matter. You haven't lost anything. As long as you've been cool and you've done your best, some things just don't work out, and that's okay. But it means you didn't blow some massive opportunity, but at the same time, you got a chance to learn what it is to collaborate, learn what it is to put on a show, learn how to do things better. And as you get better, and as your interactions get better, your experiences will get better, and you will start naturally moving up with working with more established artists, or speaking to bigger labels, or speaking to bigger venues, or bigger artists to go on tour with, that sort of thing. It's just, you can start small and gain the experience so that by the time you are working at a bigger level, it's a much, much better experience. And you're not under any pressure because you can see this is just another small step. It's not suddenly this thing that really has to work out for you. And also, scenes often move up together. You interact with artists who are on your level, and you start doing something together, and you sort of build a bit of a scene amongst yourselves. Anyone who gets successful in that scene is going to have a knock-on effect for the others. When I was just starting out and I was touring, there were certain bands that I would go on tour with who ended up becoming way more successful than me. But they would still take me on tour with them, and I got exposed. I mean, their music was more pop music and mine was more niche, but because we were buddies, they would still take me on tour with them. We had developed a relationship. I would organize shows that they would play it, they would organize shows that I would play it, and it pulled my career along that in a way that it wouldn't have been if it was just me all alone from the start. Even here, I have my contacts. I go tour in a small town. There's no one at the show, but I make a good contact with the promoter who also happens to be a musician, and the next thing we're going on tour together. So you never really know where the benefit is going to come from. And the guy who I went on tour with is part of another songwriting scene, and those guys come to Berlin and we play shows together. And as anyone develops, we all develop together, and that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And when it comes to your fans, as you're picking up fans through this whole process, collect all the details of anyone who shows interest in your music. And always have something to offer in exchange for those contact details. So don't just make it, hey, let me spam you with stuff. It's like, hey, you speak about your music, you meet someone, they're like, oh, that sounds cool, I'm really into that. And then your next sentence is, cool, can I send you something? I'll send you my free single for free. And people are often really flattered and really like it that an artist would just send their song to them for free. But now you have their contact details, and so when your next gig comes up and when your next album comes out, you have a list of people who have already, they've shown interest in your music. That's why they're on your list, and you can promote your stuff to them. Don't lose your contacts. Like when you start this list should grow through your whole career. Store it online. Make sure that it's not going to disappear and you're going to lose your whole audience basically if you lose a piece of paper or if you lose the book that they're written in. Stay in touch with them, but give more than you ask. Don't only be in contact when you're asking them for something. Be in contact whether you're sending them playlists, whether you are asking for all sorts of different interactions. I mean, this is part of the creativity, being an artist, is coming up with ideas where you can interact with your audience in a way that doesn't make them feel just used all the time. Maybe say, hey, I want to write a song with lines for my audience. Doesn't anyone want to send me some ideas? These sort of interactions, it doesn't have to be the only way you work, but don't let it be that you're only interacting with your fans when you want them to buy your CD or you want them to come to your shows. Find stuff to do in between. It doesn't have to be intense. It doesn't mean you have to be doing stuff every week or every day. But know that if you want to ask for a lot of stuff, keep in mind that you should be giving stuff back as well. Maybe even if it's discount on tickets or discount on CDs or 3 songs of the CD for free before it comes out. It can be all sorts of things. But just keep that in mind. We've looked at how to think about planning your career. We've looked at how to go about building your audience. But at the core of all of this is your art. I'm not going to tell you your art should be this or should be that, but there is definitely a lot to be said about how you're working on your art and are you working as well as you could be. Going back to that original idea of averages, the main thing you should be thinking of, in my opinion, is how to improve your average day as an artist. If you want to be a professional, you should be acting like a professional. And like I said, when we look at music videos or read interviews, a lot of the time we're being sold an image. It's not necessarily exactly how things are in the real world of an artist. Artists often are just working every day. They love their jobs. They're working in music studios. They're working collaborations. They're on tours, but they are working. And it reminds me of when I was on tour. I've played a show in Switzerland, a show at a venue in Switzerland a few times. I've been there a few times at least. And after a couple after 2 or 3 times of him being there, got him to chat to the manager because I was there. And, because I went to the bar and I just ordered an alcohol-free beer, and he was like, "Yeah, it's really funny because artists who come through here, there's always the same progression. The first time they come through, it's just the band. They're drinking loads of beer, having a good time. Second time, half the band are doing that, but the other band are there maybe with their family. And the third time, everyone is there and everyone's drinking tea. Because at that point, they've learned it's hard to be on tour being hung over every day. It's just not practical. Like, you have a job to do. You know, when you get up on stage, you're in the office. When you're in the studio, you're in the office. I'm definitely not one to dictate how people should live their lives, but you can't. I find it very hard to work well if I've had a drink, and I would find that difficult in an office situation, and I find it difficult in an art situation. And if you want to be a professional, you need to act like a professional. You need to develop really good working habits, because it's that consistency and that hard work which is really it's at the deep core of your career. How well you are, how good you are at making music, like how well you work, how much you can produce, over what long period of time you can produce work for. That is really the audience and the career planning, it just all falls apart if you don't have good work to promote. And develop a habit of writing music and lyrics every day. I know this sounds like a lot, but being able to sit down and write every day will be of such a massive benefit to you, that you will be really, really surprised at how fast you progress and how much stuff you learn over a period of a year or two, that what you would have done if you were just sitting around waiting for inspiration. You know, this work isn't supposed to always feel good. You know, it's not possible for anything to always feel good. If something felt really great every day, eventually it would become a bit boring because it just feels the same. You know, it would lose that moment of feeling great. And if you're just waiting to write or to work on your music when it feels like it's the right time, what about all the time in between when you could be writing something else? Maybe you could have had an awful day and written a great song. You never know when that song is going to come, and it doesn't always come when it's the right moment. So just waiting for inspiration. You know, there's a really great quote by Stephen King, who's a famous author. I have another quote from him later, and it's like, amateurs wait for inspiration, professionals just get to work. And I feel like that's really the truth on a lot of things. Like, you should be writing 5 days a week at least. You should be spending a couple hours on your craft. And if you're not, then you're not actually being a musician. You're being someone who's thinking about being a musician. You should be working on it every day. And yeah, it might be a matter of starting small. It doesn't have to be that your first, like, from tomorrow you're working 4 hours a day. It can be 15 minutes. In the beginning, it's really just a matter of getting into the habit of writing and working on your music every day, so that it feels like your day is incomplete if you didn't work on it. A great idea for this is that if you attach this habit to something else that you do. So say you wake up in the morning, every morning you brush your teeth, and immediately after brushing your teeth, you sit down and you make music. And after a while, you will feel this urge, the same way that you feel like you need to brush your teeth, you'll feel like you need to write music. And that's the point where you want to get into, that you feel like every day it hasn't been a cool day if you didn't write music. And developing that habit will really provide you with a really great foundation for whatever happens after that. There are a lot of reasons for this. I think I touched on this a little bit later, but that if you want to collaborate with someone, and you say you've got some lyrics, and you send them some lyrics, and they're like, okay, it's not exactly what we were looking for. Do you have anything else? And you've been writing every day. You have tons of stuff to send them. Not to think, oh, this is just one cool thing you wrote 3 months ago and you've been shopping it around for ages. You've been working. You have loads of music, you have loads of lyrics, you have loads of riffs or whatever to show everyone. And that only comes for working every day. This actually is a card that I use. I have these little cards that, you get them from the CNA or Pick and Pay or something, and I divide them into weeks, and every day that I work, I fill in a green block, and every day that I finish a track, I do a square around it. And I've done like 20. Okay, this is 23. I've finished one track since I've finished this card, since I made this picture at least. So I've finished 24 tracks this year already. A lot of them are just nonsense. They're not. Not something that I'll play to like anyone but a close friend just to show them what I've been doing. But a couple of them are really great. I'm really happy with them. But I never would have made those if I hadn't made the other 20. It just wouldn't have happened. And I'm, keeping track of myself, I can see really how I've been working. It's easy to think, oh, I write every day, but in reality, actually, you write once a week. And here you can see, like, sometimes I've had other projects, like I've had this workshop to put together, and for a few days I didn't write. And it's important to know, oh, it's been 5 or 6 days since I wrote. This isn't cool. I really need to get back on it again. And using really simple visual aids like this can be really helpful in keeping yourself honest and knowing how much work you're actually putting in. And something to keep in mind with all this is what you can call the secret of 70%. And this goes really alongside this talk of averages that we've had, is that you don't have to aim for 100%. You don't have to aim to write the best song every time. If you can write something to 70% of your ability, you are progressing. Not every song is going to be great. Not everything is going to be a hit. Not everything is going to be happy. You're not going to be happy with everything that you do. Things are going to you're going to feel like you couldn't really get it to where you want it to be. And that's totally okay. Because if you feel that you've got it to 70% of your ability, it means that you're above average, and it means that you're moving yourself forward. You're moving yourself up that level. Above average, if that red line was here, above average is somewhere here, and it's just pulled that line up a little bit. So as long as you're hitting that, and you don't feel like you're just doing it to get it done, but you've actually pushed yourself a little bit, then that's really great. And it also allows you to move forward without getting stuck chasing 100%. Now, if you want to get perfect every time, eventually you just end up you can sit for months, really. I know people who sit for months and months and months on the same song. They just can't get it finished because somehow it's just not okay. And the truth is that perfection doesn't really exist. If you make one perfect song and you make another perfect song and you come back and listen to the first one, there'll be something in it that you don't like, and suddenly it will be imperfect again. So you've lost probably 10 or 20 hours or maybe days and days working on the song, that eventually there's always going to be something that you didn't notice. Get it to a point that you're happy with and move on. Stuff that maybe you're going to put on an album or is going to be released, obviously you can come back and work on it and refine it, and tweaks can always be made at a later point. But in terms of progress, in terms of progressing as an artist, you don't want to just be sitting painting one painting your whole life. Like I said, being an artist is like going on a journey. You get to see the whole world. You get to go inside yourself and discover all these things. But if you're only ever working on one thing, it's like you're just staring at the same patch of ground, or you're staring at the same tree your whole life. You want to be moving forward. Some terrains will be difficult. Some terrains will be easier. Some songs will be more inspiring, some less. But you want to be moving through them so you can look back over a year and go, I wrote 50 songs, or I wrote 30 songs. Which were the best? Which are the two or three which are really I'm going to take with me going forward? And you'll probably find that those 2 or 3 won't have existed without the others, because you would have learned something along the way. It gives you freedom to experiment. It gives you freedom to try different genres just for fun, and maybe pick up something that you can put back into what you consider to be your main work. And that's really important. And in the end, 70% of your 20th song is going to be better than 70% of your first song. You will just progress. It's easy to write a verse. It's easy to write a line. It's easy to think of wanting to make an album. It's easy to think of going on tour. But, that's the easiest part. I had a friend at university who is watching this podcast, this workshop, and we had a joke amongst us like, well, I thought of that. I don't have to do it now. And yeah, we kind of recognized that, yeah, it's only a very small piece of the project. You can imagine it perfectly in your head, but it's a whole different story when you want to bring it into reality. And even once you've started, the hardest part is the last 20%. Just getting that album to the end, making sure the tour is properly organized, sending out the posters or whatever, making sure that that song is finished, that you can listen to it from beginning to end, that all the little, even though it isn't perfect, that all those little parts that are bugging you are finished. You did it. It's not 100% perfect, but you're very satisfied with where it is. And you'll pick up what that line is. It's sort of a natural feeling. After you've done it a few times, you're like, okay, this is cool. This is done. I don't have to worry about this anymore. I can come back to it at a later point and see what it sounds like. Because an unfinished project or an unfinished track has no value. You know, if you almost did it, you didn't do it. You know, if you say, yeah, I've got a lot of unfinished songs, well, then what you write is unfinished songs. You know, you don't magically start to write a whole lot of finished songs if all you've ever written is single verses or single choruses or single riffs. You have to be good at writing songs, or to be good at doing anything, you need to do that thing. You know, and doing half of it is being good at doing half of it. It's not the same. So you learn to finish by finishing. And again, like I've said, perfection is the enemy of progress. Like, if you're going to be super, super focused on just trying to make everything 100% perfect, then you're only ever going to end up doing that one thing, because it'll never be finished. And finally, build a body of work. Aim for a collection of great work, not just one great track. The same way that we backcasted our career, think about how many songs you want to have written in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time. Think about what will make you proud to have done it. How many great songs do you want to have written? And think about how many songs you will need to write for that. You know, if it means that it's, you know, I think being very generous, it might be 1 out of 10, but it's maybe like 2 or 3 out of 50. Think, okay, you got to write 50 songs a year if you really want to be great. You know, if you really want to learn, if you really want to be at the top of your game, you really need to write a lot of music and work out what that would be for yourself. Because also, anyone who hears one track is going to want to hear more. Like, people aren't going to hear, if you are very lucky enough to have a hit single, people want to hear you don't want to be a one-hit wonder. You know, you want to have something to back that up with. When people are like, oh, I love this track, what else do you have? A label wants to release your song, but they want to release an EP. Do you have 4 other tracks? And if you don't do them, are you confident that you could sit down in a month and write them all? Because you've been doing it anyway. You know, that's the situation you want to be in. And yeah, the more you make, the faster you will improve. If you're just waiting for inspiration, you will improve in little bits and pieces. If you're working every day, you will very quickly realize where areas of your abilities that you need to pay attention to, and you will just improve really consistently. And when you look back after a year or 2 years, you'll be quite surprised at how far you've come. And yeah, ultimately, a good body of work when it comes to the industry shows that you're committed and that you're professional. It shows the people around you, maybe it's your friends and families who are unsure of your career as an artist. We've all faced that sort of thing. You know, when you're working and you can show them stuff, it helps people to know that you're working really hard. When a label is interested in signing you, it helps them when they know, wow, this person is a professional. You know, look at their body of work. Look at how hard they work. We definitely want this person on our team. And yeah, that's kind of this is the end of my overall view of being an independent musician. It's an amazing place to be. It doesn't have to be the top of the top 100, but it's yeah, you get to work, you get to feel inspired, you get to move through your life being an artist, and I hope some of these tips are helpful, and I've given you some food for thought. It's obviously, all of this stuff is from my experience, and it's to a greater extent, my opinion. So it's just, you can put it in your toolbox as one thing for you to think about, one other set of information to use. You know, other people might have also some more information to add. And I just want to end with there were a couple of quotes there. One was from Prince, who said, yeah, it can take years and years to become an overnight success. You know, like, if you look at artists, if you look at their biographies, they were all working for years and years and years before anyone discovered them. And this is the time to work for years and years and years until someone discovers you. And the last quote was from this novelist, Stephen King, who said that, yeah, sometimes you just don't feel like it. Sometimes it's just not fun. Like, sometimes you got to understand that you're doing really good work, even if it feels like it's completely awful. And this is someone who says, yeah, like, how do you become a writer? You write every day, you know, and he's written like 60 books and sold more than 340 million copies. And, you know, it's just the work. You just got to do the work. And that's it for me. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you've got something out of it. It's been a real pleasure to be here. I just want to say thanks to Old Mutual and for having me along. I feel, yeah, really privileged to be able to speak to you guys alongside the rest of the lineup of like really amazing South African musicians. Thanks.
Music has changed. How it makes us feel never will. The time is now to visit mstudios.co.za.